I hadn't been home in almost a year, but Mom insisted on a simple family dinner. In our house, simple meant linen napkins, 3 kinds of wine, and Melissa showing up 20 minutes late so everyone could see her grand entrance. She walked in like she owned the place, heels clicking, smile rehearsed, voice louder than necessary. "Emily, you made it," she said, kissing the air near my cheek. "Still doing that little security job, huh?" I smiled, because that's what you do when you're raised by a Navy dad and a mother who believed silence was more elegant than defense. "Still doing it," I said, setting down my coat. Dad poured himself another scotch. Mom adjusted the candles like that might soften the tension. Melissa wasn't finished. "You know, I keep telling people my sister works in security, and they think you're guarding a mall. You could have joined me at Carter Infrastructure, you know. We always have room for family." Her husband chuckled. "Family discount?" The table laughed. I didn't. "Not everyone likes office life," I said, cutting into the roast chicken. Melissa smirked. "Oh, right, you prefer excitement checking badges and parking lots." She looked around for approval, and of course she got it. She always did. It's funny how people think your silence means they've won. What they don't realize is some of us were trained to wait before striking. Dad finally spoke. "Melissa, that's enough." His tone carried the same authority that once made sailors snap to attention. But Melissa just smiled sweetly. "I'm just teasing. She knows that." Sure, I knew. I also knew the coordinates of 2 encrypted servers that had recently gone dark near Wilmington. But that wasn't dinner conversation. Mom changed the subject, bless her. "Emily, you're still in Norfolk, right?" "Yeah," I said. "Still near the base." Melissa raised an eyebrow. "Base? I thought you were private now." "I do contract work," I replied. "Some of it involves Navy systems." She rolled her eyes. "So basically tech support in uniform." Dad shot me a look across the table, the kind that said, "Don't bite." I didn't. I just kept cutting my food, one calm, silent slice at a time. When dessert came, Melissa launched into a story about her latest government project. Bridges, contracts, deadlines, the usual self-promotion. Then she leaned back and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "Maybe next time, you can do the security for one of my events, Em. I'll even get you a badge with your name spelled right." The laughter felt like clinking glass, polite, sharp, unnecessary. I smiled again. "Appreciate it. I'll add it to my resume." Her husband raised his glass. "To the Carters. One big, successful family." I almost choked on my wine. Success is a strange word. It depends on what you measure. After dinner, I helped Mom clean up. She gave me that motherly half-smile. "She doesn't mean harm," she whispered. "She means every word," I said softly, rinsing a plate. Dad appeared in the doorway. He didn't say much. He never did. But as I grabbed my keys, he said, "Never explain yourself to people who enjoy misunderstanding you. Em?" That was his way of saying, "Keep your head." Outside, the air smelled like salt and winter. My phone buzzed a message from a secure channel I hadn't used in 6 months. Classified alert. Data breach origin traced to Wilmington sector. Authorization required. My pulse didn't rise. It never does. Training does that to you. I stared back at the house, warm light spilling from the dining room window. Inside, Melissa was probably telling another story, something about leadership, probably involving a PowerPoint. The message flashed again. I typed, "Confirmed. I'm in Wilmington." Funny timing, really. She just mocked my little security job. Maybe it was time to show her what security really looked like. Before I drove off, I glanced in the rearview mirror. The reflection caught the edge of our family's old Navy flag hanging by the porch. Dad had always said that flag stood for duty, not pride. I finally understood what he meant. Some people defend their titles. Others defend their country. That night, I didn't sleep. I reorganized my travel kit, checked my ID cards, and reactivated a Navy-issued access key I wasn't supposed to touch anymore. My civilian badge said, Hawthorne Defense Systems, Security Analyst. My encrypted one said, NIOD Field Ops, Signal Intelligence. Different worlds, same mission. By sunrise, I was on the road back to Wilmington. Not because my sister's words hurt me, those stopped hurting years ago, but because something inside her world had gone wrong. And if what my sources suggested was true, her company's systems were part of it. I turned off the highway toward the coast, coffee in hand, sunlight cutting through fog. The car radio murmured about morning traffic, schools reopening, and a local business expansion in, of course, Carter Infrastructure Group. I smirked. Of course she was in the news again. She always was. What she didn't know was that the next headline might not be about growth. If you've ever had someone mock your work, your choices, or your worth, drop a comment below. I read every one of them. And if you like true revenge stories and military secrets that hit a little too close to home, make sure you subscribe. There's more truth behind this uniform than most people realize. I drove past the "Welcome to Wilmington" sign just as my encrypted phone buzzed again. The screen lit up with one line. Target source confirmed. Contractor under internal audit. Priority, family proximity clearance. Family. The word never sounded so complicated. The sound of tires on wet asphalt filled the car as I pulled into Wilmington. The place hadn't changed much. Same harbor smell, same strip of defense contractors lined up like dominoes, each pretending not to spy on the other. My cover story was already in motion. Hawthorne Defense Systems had sent the formal request to support a routine network audit for Carter Infrastructure Group, Melissa's company. At the front desk, the receptionist smiled too widely. Name? Emily Carter, Contracting Security Review. Her smile froze a little at the last name. Oh, Miss Carter, you're Melissa's sister. There it was, the label. That was all I ever was here. Someone's sister. She led me past a glass hallway, lined with motivational posters about teamwork and innovation. The kind of slogans that usually mean, please don't look too closely at what we're actually doing. Melissa came out of her office with that same boardroom confidence. Well, this is unexpected. Corporate requested an outside audit, I said. Conflict of interest rules mean it can't be internal. She crossed her arms. So, you're auditing me now? I'm auditing the system. You just happen to run it. Her laugh was sharp. Please, I doubt my little sister from Norfolk is the big bad watchdog they sent. Then you have nothing to worry about. For a moment, something flickered in her eyes, annoyance, maybe curiosity, but she turned away. Fine. My assistant will give you network access. Don't break anything. Her office smelled like new money and old ego. I'd been in war rooms that felt less hostile. When she left, I unpacked my laptop, a secure tablet, and a thin drive with encrypted Navy software. The audit terminal was slow, outdated, and noisy. Perfect. No one suspects a machine that looks this useless. I started tracing data packets through the internal network. Carter Infrastructure handled infrastructure contracts, roads, bridges, marine construction. But buried deep in a directory labeled Archive 04 were encrypted sonar test logs. Not something a civilian company should be storing. The timestamps matched the recent data breach. Someone inside had used company credentials to access classified Navy sonar data, then routed it through a civilian proxy in Estonia. I cross-referenced the user ID. Login. M. Carter. Melissa's account. For a few seconds, I just stared at the screen. I didn't want to believe it. She had no access to this level of data, unless someone handed it to her, or unless she was careless. I ran another check. The file transfer originated from her office's IP address, but through a remote login client. Someone else had been inside her account. That narrowed it down to one of two things: a hack or an inside job. The door creaked. Melissa poked her head in. How's the audit going, Agent Carter? She said, dripping sarcasm. Quiet, I said, without looking up. Well, keep it that way. I've got a call with the Navy this afternoon. Of course she did. Her company had several military contracts. The irony wasn't lost on me. After she left, I plugged in my secure drive, launched a hidden trace protocol, and tagged every outgoing connection. If any classified data moved again, I'd know where it went and who sent it. Around 3 p.m., I got an alert. A routine backup running under the same M. Carter credentials. Except this one was transferring files to a third-party vendor called ShawTech Consulting. ShawTech. That name showed up in a lot of places it shouldn't, particularly in NCIS data reports from a year ago. I made a note and locked my system. Time to see the man behind the screen. Ethan Shaw was a mid-level IT engineer, early 30s, smug in the way people get when they think no one's watching. I found him in the server room, headphones in, tapping away. "Hey," I said casually. "Network audit? You're Ethan?" He pulled off his headphones. "That's me. You need something?" "Yeah, a minute of your time. The system's throwing errors in the backup logs. Might be compression conflicts." He shrugged. "Wouldn't surprise me. Melissa keeps approving updates we don't need." That was interesting. "She personally approves them?" "Yeah, everything goes through her portal. Real control freak." I smiled slightly. Noted. When he turned away, I slipped a tracking dongle into the spare port on his workstation. It would quietly log every transfer he initiated for the next 48 hours. Walking back through the office, I could hear laughter from Melissa's glass conference room. She was holding a meeting, charming investors, making promises about growth and innovation. If only they knew her company's growth included foreign IP addresses and compromised sonar data. At 5:15, I shut down the terminal, packed my gear, and headed for the exit. The receptionist waved. "See you tomorrow, Miss Carter." "Howard?" "Yeah," I said. "Tomorrow." Outside, the sky was bruised gray over the river. I leaned against my car, watching the lights in the building flicker on one by one. Somewhere behind those windows was the person who'd used my sister's account to betray a Navy contract. Or maybe it was my sister herself. The thought burned more than I expected. We hadn't been close in years, but there were still memories, birthday cakes, Christmas mornings, late-night talks when Dad was deployed. She'd always wanted to be the leader. I'd always wanted peace. Now both of us were standing on opposite sides of the same investigation, and only one of us knew it. My phone buzzed again. NIOD. Confirm field placement. Maintain cover. Target suspected contractor network. I typed back. Active. Family link confirmed. The irony made me laugh quietly. Family link indeed. I started the engine, the dashboard lighting up in the dark. Across the street, the building glowed with Carter Infrastructure's logo, sleek, respectable, untouchable. At least, that's what everyone thought. Inside, my trace program was already running, quietly capturing every file Ethan moved, every keystroke made under Melissa's login. By the time the first data ping came through, I was halfway across town, sipping cold coffee, parked near the docks with the engine off. The alert flashed. Outbound transfer. Detected authorized by McCarter destination, external VPN, Shawtech. I stared at it. The network didn't lie. Family dinners were complicated. This was worse. The next morning, I walked into Carter Infrastructure with a coffee I didn't drink and a smile I didn't mean. The receptionist greeted me again with that same overly cheerful tone. "Good morning, Miss Carter." It was strange, hearing that name here. In Norfolk, Carter meant Navy discipline. In Wilmington, it meant Melissa's company. I clocked in as consultant, badged through the side door, and entered the IT wing like any other contractor. Nobody looked twice. The best way to disappear is to seem ordinary. Melissa, of course, made sure I didn't. She called me into her office before lunch. "You don't need to wear that badge around here," she said. "People might think I hired you out of pity." I looked her in the eye. "You did." She blinked, caught off guard for once. "Excuse me? You hired me to look good, not to work. That's pity with a business card." Her expression tightened. "Careful, Emily. This is my company. Then you should know what's running through your servers." She laughed, short and sharp. "I know exactly what's running through them. Invoices and bridge blueprints." "Sure," I said. "Invoices." She didn't like that. She didn't like the calm tone either. I could see it in her jaw, the same twitch she used to get when I beat her at chess as kids. She'd learned early how to win in public and lose in private. After she left for a meeting, I stayed behind. I plugged my encrypted drive into the admin port, initiating a silent scan. The trace I'd planted yesterday had already gathered new data, nighttime traffic, external logins, and something else. Access attempts coming from inside the company. routed through a shadow VPN that mimicked an internal device. The name on the profile: E. Shaw. So Ethan was doing more than tech maintenance. He was running ghost transfers under Melissa's approval chain. Clever. I exported the log and wiped my trace. If the FBI saw this raw, it would look like Melissa was complicit. I needed to be sure before turning it in. The Navy taught me that once you accuse, there's no undo button. Around noon, Mom called. I shouldn't have answered, but old habits die slow. Sweetheart, Melissa said you're working together. Isn't that nice? Sure, I said. It's nostalgic. She's proud of you, you know. I almost laughed. That makes one of us. When I hung up, Melissa appeared at my desk again, perfectly timed, as if she could sense when I was about to regain composure. Hey, Mom called you too? She asked, feigning warmth. She called you first, I replied. Melissa smiled. Of course she did. That's how it always was. Her version of reality came first. In the afternoon, I sat through one of her management meetings just to observe. She was brilliant at presentation. Even I had to give her that. She could make cost overruns sound like visionary risk-taking. Her team adored her because she made them feel important right up until she didn't need them anymore. During a slideshow about cybersecurity improvements, I noticed Ethan's name at the bottom of a slide. System lead. Infrastructure. He avoided my eyes. When the meeting ended, I caught him in the hallway. You're implementing new backup automation? He nodded. Melissa's orders. We're expanding our external sync for redundancy. Redundancy or exposure? He frowned. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing, I said. Just curious. His reaction told me everything. Defensive posture, tone too fast. He was guilty of something, maybe not ideology, but greed always leaves a trail. That night, I stayed late under the excuse of finishing the audit. Most employees were gone, lights dimmed, cleaning staff humming down the hall. I opened Melissa's terminal remotely and checked access logs again. The same pattern repeated: data packets, leaving the system in encrypted bursts every 72 hours. The next transfer was scheduled for 2. I set a counter-trigger to intercept the next connection attempt. It wasn't illegal, it was pre-authorized under my Naval contract, but if anyone found out, Melissa would have questions she didn't deserve answers to. Around midnight, I walked out of the office. The parking lot was quiet except for the hum of halogen lights. Melissa's car was still there. She worked late a lot, or at least that's what she told herself. When ambition is your oxygen, you forget how to breathe without it. I sat in my car across the lot, laptop open, eyes on the data stream. At exactly 2:02 a.m., the network lit up. User: E. Shaw. Authorization: M. Carter. Transfer: Sonar. Data: Log external node, ShawTech VPN. Got him. I pulled the full trace, timestamped it, encrypted it, and uploaded it to the NIOD secure server. Within seconds, a reply came through. Confirmed. Proceed with local observation. Maintain civilian cover. I leaned back, staring at the glow from the Carter Infrastructure Building. My sister's empire. My next battlefield. The truth was starting to form a shape, and that shape looked exactly like betrayal, only this time it wasn't personal. Or maybe it always had been. The next morning, Melissa strutted in as if nothing existed beyond her image. You should smile more, she told me, glancing at my tired face. I'll try that after I arrest someone, I said under my breath. She laughed, thinking it was a joke. Maybe it was. Maybe not. That afternoon, she invited me to a company mixer wine, clients, networking. The kind of event she used to show off her version of success. I went because people like Ethan always relax when the boss is drunk and the music is loud. Halfway through the evening, he was already bragging to a colleague about secure offshore systems and clients who pay in cash. I didn't need more proof. I just needed the right moment. Melissa noticed me standing in the corner. Emily, she said, raising a glass, try to enjoy yourself. No one's auditing tonight. I smiled back. That's what you think. Somewhere in that room, a man was selling military data under her roof, and my sister was too busy playing host to notice. The following morning, The air inside the office felt heavier, like everyone knew something but didn't want to admit it. Ethan was already at his desk, typing fast, pretending not to see me. That alone told me he had something to hide. People who are innocent greet you. People who are guilty look busy. I stood behind him long enough for him to sense me. He jumped slightly, spinning his chair halfway. "Morning," he said, voice thin. "Morning," I replied. "You working on those backups again?" He shrugged. "Yeah, Melissa wants them running smoother. She's got a call with the Navy next week about security protocols. She wants everything perfect." Perfect. That word always makes my neck itch. He reached for his coffee mug, and I noticed the faint sheen of nervous sweat on his wrist. My years in counterintel taught me one thing: nervous people always leave fingerprints, literally and digitally. When he went to grab another hard drive from the storage rack, I casually picked up his mug and set it near my laptop. A small adhesive strip on my palm collected a perfect print. I slipped it into an evidence envelope in my bag like it was nothing more than a receipt. Melissa came by mid-morning, as she always did when there was attention to soak up. "How's my little consultant doing?" she asked, leaning on the cubicle wall. "Busy," I said, not looking up. "Good. Try to stay out of the main conference room this afternoon. We've got a defense contractor visiting." I typed another command, eyes still on my screen. "Which one?" She hesitated. "Does it matter?" "It always matters." She rolled her eyes and left. That was her tell. She rolled her eyes every time she was lying. By noon, I had more data than I could process at once. My trace log showed regular transmissions to Shawtech always after business hours, always through the same masked relay. I needed to know if Melissa was being framed or if she was playing dumb. Either way, Ethan was in the center of it. I headed down to the break room to find him. He was alone, eating microwave noodles and watching something on his phone. I sat across from him. "So," I said, "how long you been here?" He slurped noodles and shrugged. 4 years. Same job, same pay. Melissa's nice, but she doesn't notice people like me. "Maybe that's a good thing," I said. He snorted. "Yeah, maybe. I do." I leaned back casually. "You ever think about leaving?" He looked at me, half laughing. "And go where?" "I'm good at what I do, but this place has Navy contracts. You don't just quit a place like that. Unless someone makes it worth your while." That line hung in the air like smoke. I didn't push. I watched him return to his desk later, and something about his posture told me he'd already decided what to do next. Guilt makes people predictable. When everyone else left, I stayed. Around 6:30, the office lights dimmed to their energy-saving mode, casting everything in a pale glow. I walked over to Ethan's workstation, inserted my encrypted drive, and mirrored his hard disk in under 5 minutes. While the transfer ran, I scrolled through his personal folders. Buried between vacation photos and invoices was a directory named Sys, Backup, Temp. Inside, hundreds of logs, most encrypted, but the file names weren't. Sonar, Test, A32, Log, Def, Contract, Routing, CSV, Nav, Protocol, Draft, PDF. It wasn't backup data, it was Navy property. My stomach tightened. It's one thing to catch a thief. It's another to realize he's been stealing from your own branch of service. Footsteps echoed down the hall. I yanked the drive free and slipped it into my jacket. Ethan appeared in the doorway, pretending surprise. "Still here?" "Yeah," I said, smiling. "Couldn't sleep." He stared at me for a beat too long. "Right. Just make sure you log out when you're done." I always do." He walked away, but I could feel his eyes on my back until the elevator doors closed. By the time I got back to my apartment, it was close to midnight. I plugged the drive into my secure terminal and decrypted one of the files. Inside, full sonar calibration maps of the Virginia class submarine fleet. No way in hell this belonged on a civilian machine. I sent a coded summary to my NEOD handler. The reply came fast. "Operation Deep Current. Authorization pending. Prepare cross-agency coordination. Maintain civilian cover until further notice." It wasn't the kind of message you got unless something big was about to happen. At 7 a.m., I walked into the office again like nothing had changed. Melissa was already there, looking irritated. "You left your laptop on my desk last night," she said. "Did I?" "Yeah, I locked it up for you." "Thanks." Her tone was flat, but her eyes weren't. She was hiding something, maybe not guilt, maybe just fear. I wondered if Ethan had warned her I was digging. Around mid-morning, the Navy liaison arrived for a project briefing. Melissa called me in to look professional. I stood quietly by the wall while she boasted about data security improvements and integrity of defense operations. I almost laughed. When the meeting ended, the liaison shook my hand. "Hawthorne Defense, right?" "That's right," I said. He lowered his voice slightly. "We're aware of your other credentials, Miss Carter. Keep your eyes open." So the Navy already knew, and they were letting me play it out. That's the thing about intelligence work. You're never as alone as you think, but you're always the one carrying the weight. That afternoon, I noticed Ethan watching me again from across the floor. Every few minutes, he'd glance up like he wanted to say something but couldn't. Eventually, he approached. "Listen," he said quietly. "I know you're not just a consultant. You're poking where you shouldn't." "Oh? And where's that?" He smirked. "Places that could bury people." I leaned closer. "Only if they deserve it." He smiled like a man who thinks he's smarter than he is. "Careful. You might find more family in this than you want to." That line stayed with me long after he walked away. I didn't respond, didn't flinch, didn't breathe. Somewhere behind his arrogance was a truth I hadn't seen yet. And if he was right, if there really was more family in this than I wanted, then the storm I'd stepped into wasn't just about data, it was about blood. By the time I left the office that night, the Navy had already set things in motion. A secure message hit my phone at 11:43 p.m., the kind that made my stomach tighten out of habit. Operation Deep Current, activated. Joint coordination with FBI and NCIS confirmed. Maintain cover. The first rule of an operation like this: never look like you know what's happening. The second: never underestimate how stupid people get when they think they're safe. I sat in my car outside Carter Infrastructure, watching the last few lights go out. Somewhere inside, Ethan was still moving data. Somewhere else, Melissa was probably drafting her next speech about innovation. I spent the next morning meeting with a man who introduced himself only as Special Agent Turner. He looked like every other federal agent pressed suit, no personality. We met in a coffee shop on the edge of town, because apparently spies and cops both believe caffeine makes lies sound friendlier. Turner slid a folder across the table. "You're sure about the source?" "Positive," I said. "Shawtek's VPN routes back through this building. Melissa Carter's credentials are being used to move classified sonar data." He tapped the folder. "We traced Shawtek, front company. 2 layers of shell corporations, both tied to a defense broker out of Berlin. That's foreign intel territory. Then why's it running through Wilmington?" He smiled, humorless. "Because no one checks small-town contractors. They check DC. They check New York. They don't check Wilmington." He leaned back. "We're planning a joint strike FBI cybercrime, NCIS tech unit, and your agency. But we'll need you inside for confirmation before we act." "I've been inside for weeks," I said. "Then don't blink now, the gala is our window." The gala, Melissa's annual fundraising event. Local politicians, military reps, wealthy donors, and apparently, at least one group of foreign buyers posing as infrastructure investors. I didn't need to ask why they picked that night. Crowds make great camouflage. When I got back to the office, Melissa was in full PR mode: flowers, catering menus, a photographer hovering around for social media. She looked radiant and oblivious, the perfect combination for disaster. "Emily," she said, spinning around with a grin. "You'll be there tomorrow, right? You can handle security details for the VIP section. That's your area, isn't it?" She said it with that same teasing tone, but this time I smiled for real. "Yeah," I said. "That's my area." That afternoon, Turner sent me a new encrypted contact line for NCIS coordination. I spent an hour on the phone with a woman named Harris, calm, methodical, the kind of voice you want in a crisis. "We'll have 3 undercover agents at the gala," she said. "You'll be our eyes. Once the handoff starts, Signal by switching your comms to channel 7. Don't speak, just double tap your mic. FBI will move in. What if it happens before they're ready? Then, improvise. You're Navy. You people live for that. She wasn't wrong. That night, I couldn't sleep. I went through the layout of the event entry points, exits, camera positions, blind spots. I mapped every potential route Ethan could use if he tried to run. Melissa texted around midnight. Don't forget your badge for tomorrow. We're expecting press. I almost laughed. If only she knew which kind of press was showing up. By morning, I was at the event venue, setting up security scanners with my Hawthorne ID hanging around my neck. To everyone else, I was just the woman with a clipboard and an earpiece. Perfect. Melissa floated across the floor like she was born for it, shaking hands, smiling, soaking up attention. Every time someone mentioned her leadership, she turned slightly toward me, like showing off a prize she'd rescued from mediocrity. See my sister? She said to a guest. She's in security, keeps the place running smooth. The guest smiled politely. Family business? Sort of, she said, laughing. She takes her job very seriously. I nodded, pretending not to hear. Around 8, Ethan arrived. Black suit, slick hair, eyes scanning the room too much for a man pretending to network. He stayed close to the catering staff, probably thinking no one would notice. I pretended to check my earpiece, but what I was really checking was his Bluetooth connection. He'd paired a concealed drive to his phone. Shawtek's VPN was live again. At 8:37 p.m., I saw him slip something, a flash drive, into a champagne glass carried by one of the servers. The glass made its way across the room to a man in a gray suit with a foreign accent so smooth it could have been manufactured. That was the handoff. I pressed my mic twice. Channel 7 activated. Turner's voice came through, calm and direct. Signal confirmed. Hold position. Ethan caught my eye across the room. For the first time, he looked nervous. He mouthed something, maybe my name, but I didn't move. The man in gray handed the glass back to a different waiter, then nodded toward the exit. The transaction was done. It took less than 10 seconds. Turner's voice again. Move in. Within seconds, plainclothes agents converged. The music didn't even stop until someone dropped a tray of glasses. Melissa froze mid-sentence as FBI jackets appeared from nowhere. Ethan tried to run. He didn't make it 2 steps before Harris had him face down on the marble floor. The man in gray didn't resist, he just smiled like someone who'd expected this all along. Melissa turned to me, her face pale. What's happening? I kept my voice steady. Security breach. She blinked, confused. But how did you know? I told you, I said quietly. It's my area. As Ethan was led past her in handcuffs, he muttered, Should have known you weren't just a guard. I didn't answer. The guests were escorted out, the band silenced, the lights turned harsh and clinical. Turner appeared beside me, nodding once. Nice work, Carter. You just shut down a data leak that's been active for 8 months. Melissa just stared, silent, eyes darting between us. You knew. I looked at her for a long moment. You really thought I was here for the catering? She didn't reply. She didn't have to. Across the ballroom floor, FBI agents packed up evidence bags. Flash drives, laptops, encrypted phones. The music had stopped, but the echoes stayed. And standing in the middle of all of it, my sister, the successful CEO, finally realized who she'd been mocking all this time. The ballroom smelled like champagne and nerves. Even after the arrests, no one wanted to leave right away. People lingered in little clusters, pretending they had nothing to do with what just happened. That's how the wealthy process panic. They make it look like networking. FBI agents moved through the crowd quietly, collecting devices, taking statements, handing out polite lies about a minor technical issue. In the middle of it, Melissa stood frozen, still trying to make sense of the wreckage. Her perfect event, her career centerpiece, had turned into an active crime scene in under 10 minutes. I stood by one of the exit doors, radio still on, listening to Turner coordinate teams. Unit 2, secure the West Wing. NCIS is taking custody of the Shawtek drives. Oh. Melissa turned toward me. You did this, she whispered. You brought them here. They were already here, I said. I just turned on the lights. Her face went pale. You could have warned me. I couldn't. Because of your security clearance? Or because you enjoyed watching me fall on my face? That one stung a little. Not because she was right, but because she wasn't entirely wrong. Turner walked over. Miss Carter, you'll need to come with us for questioning. Melissa blinked. Questioning. I didn't do anything. Then it should be quick, he said, voice calm, almost kind. We just need to confirm how your login credentials were used. She looked at me. My login? Emily, what the hell is he talking about? I didn't answer. Turner gestured toward the door, and she followed, heels clacking against marble, like the echo of everything she'd built cracking underneath her. When the ballroom finally emptied, I sat down on one of the now silent chairs. Someone's half-finished glass of wine sat next to me. I stared at the bubbles until they stopped moving. Harris came over, NCIS badge now visible. Your sister's clean, she said. At least for now. Shawtek's it guy, Ethan Shaw, is taking the fall. Full confession pending. Pending means you don't believe him. She smirked. I work in intelligence. I don't believe anyone. I nodded. Fair. Harris sat beside me, lowering her voice. You did good work tonight. NIOD's already logging this as a successful operation. Successful? I asked. We just detonated my sister's career in public. She'll live, Harris said. You saved more than a few classified systems from exposure. You don't get to control collateral damage. I didn't reply. The room was too quiet for arguments. Later that night, I drove to the FBI field office where Melissa was being interviewed. The building was sterile and humming with artificial light. I flashed my credentials and walked past the front desk. Turner saw me coming and raised an eyebrow. Here to check on your sister? Here to check on the report, I said. He looked at me for a long moment, then sighed. She didn't know anything. Ethan used her credentials for months, piggybacked on her approvals. He built a separate remote access tunnel using her account as a mask. She was clueless. Clueless or careless? He shrugged. Same outcome, but she's free to go. We're keeping her under surveillance just in case. Through the one-way glass, I could see her sitting at the table, arms crossed, staring at the wall. She looked smaller than I'd ever seen her. Not weak, just deflated. Like someone who'd finally realized control is an illusion. When she came out, she didn't look at me right away. She just grabbed her purse, straightened her jacket, and said, I hope you're happy. I'm not, I said. But I am right. She scoffed. You could have told me. Obey. You wouldn't have believed me. Try me. You never listened when I was warning you about anything before. Why start now? Her eyes were sharp again, the same ones that used to win every argument when we were kids. You think you're a hero, don't you? I shook my head. Heroes don't work in silence. We walked outside together, the parking lot lights buzzing overhead. She stopped near her car. Do you ever regret joining the Navy? Every day, I said. And then I wake up and remember why I did. She didn't answer. She just got in the car and drove off, tires hissing on the wet asphalt. Turner stepped out behind me. You handled that better than I would have. I wasn't trying to handle it, I said. Just finish it. He nodded toward the sky. We'll file the final reports tonight. NIOD will close the case in the morning. You'll be cleared for reassignment. Reassignment? San Diego office. Strategic intelligence. You've earned it. All Lodi. He left me there, standing in the lot, the hum of fluorescent lights filling the silence. Back at my apartment, I kicked off my shoes and dropped my badge on the table. The city outside was quiet. The kind of quiet that's supposed to mean peace, but never really does. I poured myself a drink and opened my laptop. The secure inbox had a new message from NIOD Command. Mission complete. Recommend debrief and classification review. Great work, Agent Carter. I stared at the screen. Great work. It didn't feel great. I thought of Melissa's face at the gala, the confusion, the humiliation, the betrayal she thought was personal. Maybe it was. Maybe part of me had wanted her to finally see who I was, even if it meant breaking her world apart to do it. I closed the laptop and leaned back. The sound of sirens passed faintly in the distance. The city kept breathing, unbothered. I'd done my job. That was the only thing that mattered. But sometimes when the job is over, silence doesn't feel like victory. It just feels like the sound of everything left unsaid. Melissa didn't call me for 2 weeks. Not a text, not an email, not even one of those fake friendly just checking in messages she usually sent when she wanted to look mature. That silence told me everything. The local paper broke the story first. FBI busts data leak at Wilmington defense contractor. The article named Ethan Shaw and hinted at potential corporate negligence. They didn't print Melissa's name, but everyone in town knew who ran Carter Infrastructure. Her reputation didn't just take a hit, it imploded. By the time I saw her again, she'd swapped her designer suits for plain sweaters and stopped wearing makeup. We met at Dad's place, the one person neither of us could say no to. He'd called it a family dinner, but I knew it was an intervention. Dad was a retired Navy SEAL, quiet, disciplined, allergic to nonsense. The kind of man who could slice through a room's tension with a single eyebrow raise. When Melissa walked in, she didn't even look at me. She went straight to him, kissed his cheek, and sat down like it was just another Sunday night. Dad didn't waste time. "You two need to talk." I took a sip of my water. "We're talking." He shot me a look that said, "Don't play with me." Melissa folded her arms. "What's there to talk about? Emily got what she wanted. I lost everything." I set my glass down. "You lost control of a situation you didn't understand. There's a difference." Her laugh was sharp. "You sound like one of your military briefings. Cold, detached. Congratulations, you're a machine. And you're still playing victim." Dad cleared his throat. "Enough." Melissa looked at him. "She humiliated me, Dad. In front of clients, the press, everyone." He turned his gaze to me. "Did you?" "I did my job," I said. He exhaled slowly, leaning back in his chair. "Melissa, you built a business that depended on trust. You let people near your systems who shouldn't have been there. That's on you. Emily didn't create the mess, she cleaned it up." Melissa's eyes went glassy. "You're taking her side." "I'm taking the side of the truth," he said. "And I raised 2 daughters who were supposed to protect each other, not tear each other down." The room went quiet. I could feel Melissa's anger burning, but she wasn't used to being told she was wrong. She looked at me finally. "Was this revenge?" "No," I said. "Revenge is personal. This was national security." Dad stood and headed for the kitchen, giving us space to talk. Once he was out of earshot, Melissa leaned forward, lowering her voice. "Do you even realize what you cost me? My company's being audited. Clients are walking away. My name's radioactive." Your company was being used to launder classified intel. Be grateful you're not in prison." Her lips tightened. "You enjoy this, don't you? Watching me fall." I looked her straight in the eye. "No, Melissa. I just stopped pretending you were untouchable." She stood up, grabbed her purse, and headed for the door. Dad called after her, but she didn't turn back. After she left, he poured himself a cup of coffee and sat across from me. "You know she'll blame you forever," he said. "I know. See? You okay with that?" "I don't need her forgiveness. He studied me for a long time. You sound like me. Maybe I learned from the best." He chuckled, shaking his head. "That's not always a compliment." For the next few days, my phone stayed quiet. No new orders from NIOD. No family drama. Just silence. It was rare, and I didn't trust it. Then, one morning, I saw my sister's face on TV. A local news anchor was reporting that Carter Infrastructure had filed for voluntary bankruptcy. Melissa was stepping down as CEO. The camera caught her walking out of the courthouse, sunglasses on, jaw tight, still pretending she was fine. The anchor wrapped it up with a line that felt personal. "Sometimes, success can crumble from the inside." I turned off the TV and sat there for a while. That line wasn't just about her, it was about both of us. Later that afternoon, I got a call from Turner. "Congratulations," he said. "For what?" "Your operation's officially classified as mission success. You'll get commendation papers next month." "Does commendation include therapy sessions for the family fallout?" He laughed. "If it did, half of DC would be in counseling." I didn't laugh back. "What about Melissa?" "She's clear. We're not pressing charges. She's just collateral damage. I hung up and looked out the window. Wilmington's streets were calm, kids on bikes, people walking dogs, the world pretending everything was normal. A week later, Dad called me again. "She's moving," he said. "Where to?" "Charlotte. Smaller firm offered her a consulting gig. Guess she's trying to rebuild." "Good for her." He hesitated. "You should call her." "I don't think she wants to hear from me." "Maybe not," he said. "But call her anyway." That night, I did. It rang 4 times before she picked up. "What do you want?" she asked. "Nothing," I said. "Just checking in." There was a long pause, and then a sigh. "You think saying that makes everything okay?" "No, but it's a start." She didn't reply, but she didn't hang up either. For 2 people who'd spent a lifetime talking over each other, the silence was something close to progress. After the call ended, I sat in the dark with a glass of water, the hum of the refrigerator the only sound. The mission was over. The scandal had burned out. The world had moved on. But families don't move on that easily. They just learn how to live with the wreckage. And somewhere deep down, I knew Melissa wasn't done fighting, she was just regrouping. 3 months passed before I saw Melissa again. By then, winter had rolled over Wilmington, and everything looked quieter, like the city itself was trying to forget the noise we'd made. I was back at my post with Naval Intelligence, doing evaluation work for a joint program that didn't officially exist. Most days, I preferred the silence. You can't disappoint anyone when no one knows what you're doing. One morning, a letter showed up at my apartment. Real paper, real ink, no return address. Just my name written in Melissa's precise handwriting. Inside was a single page. "Dad told me what you did. I don't know if I'll ever understand it, but I'm starting to see why you did it. You were right about Ethan. About me too. I'm still angry, but I'm alive, and that counts for something." It wasn't an apology. It wasn't forgiveness either. But it was contact. And that was more than I expected. Dad called that same evening. "She's back in town," he said. "Don't make me play referee again." I wasn't planning on it. "She's different now. You both are. Maybe that's the point." End quote. He hung up before I could answer. That weekend, I stopped by his place like old times. The same creaky porch, same smell of motor oil and black coffee. Melissa's car was already in the driveway. For a second, I thought about leaving. Then I took a breath and went inside. She was in the kitchen, sleeves rolled up, helping Dad fix a broken cabinet hinge. Her hair was pulled back, no makeup, no attitude, just tired humanity. She looked up and froze for a moment. "You look good," I said. "You look the same," she said, in a scary way. I smiled. Consistency's a survival skill. We spent the next hour avoiding real topics, talking about Dad's arthritis, the weather, anything safe. But silence has a way of dragging the truth out when you least expect it. When Dad stepped out to the porch to take a call, Melissa leaned against the counter and said, "You know what hurts the most? Not what you did, but that you did it alone. I didn't have a choice." "You always say that, but you did. You could have trusted me." "You mean the way you trusted Ethan?" Her face stiffened, but she didn't look away. "Fair, but you could have said something, Emily. Just once. Instead, you let me find out from strangers that my sister works for Naval Intelligence." I folded my arms. "If I'd told you, you would have told someone else. And then I'd be debriefing in a concrete cell instead of having this conversation." She laughed bitterly. "So this is what it feels like to be a security risk. Welcome to my world." The room went still. Then she said, "You ruined my career." I nodded. "Yeah, but I saved your freedom." She swallowed hard. "And I'm supposed to thank you for that?" "No. You're supposed to learn from it." Dad came back in just as her eyes welled up. He saw the tension, but he didn't say a word, just handed us both coffee and turned on the old radio like nothing had happened. For a while, the 3 of us sat at the kitchen table, listening to the static hum between stations. It reminded me of our childhood mornings before school. Dad reading the paper, Melissa pretending to be bored, me silently counting down the days until I could enlist. Somewhere between the silence and the small talk, I realized something. She wasn't my enemy anymore. Not really. We were both soldiers in our own ways, just fighting different wars. When I stood to leave, she surprised me. "Wait," she said, reaching into her bag. She pulled out a flash drive and set it on the table. "What's that?" "My new project," she said. "I'm working with a small cybersecurity firm in Charlotte. Civilian side, all clean. I figured you'd want to check it, make sure I'm not building another ShawTech." "That's actually smart," she smirked. "I'm learning from the best, remember?" I took the drive and pocketed it. "You know, I used to think you'd never respect what I do. And, I didn't," she admitted. "Because I didn't understand it. I thought you were wasting your life guarding parking lots. Turns out you were guarding the country." Her tone wasn't sarcastic this time. It was quiet, almost proud. Dad stood, stretching his back. "You two done measuring pride yet?" Melissa rolled her eyes. "Maybe." "Good," he said. "Because dinner's burning." We ended up sitting together for another 2 hours, eating overcooked meatloaf, and talking about normal things that didn't involve betrayal, or missions, or the word classified. It wasn't reconciliation, but it was peace in small doses. That night, back at my apartment, I plugged in the flash drive. The files were clean, legit business plans, network maps, employee training modules. No shady IPs, no encrypted tunnels. She really was starting over. I scrolled through one of the documents, and at the end of a company memo, I saw a small note in italics. "Integrity isn't inherited, it's earned." It sounded like something Dad would say. Maybe that's where she'd gotten it from. Or maybe it was her way of telling me she was finally listening. I closed the laptop, leaned back, and let the quiet fill the room. For the first time in months, it didn't feel heavy. Outside, the wind brushed against the window, and the night felt strangely calm, not because everything was fixed, but because I'd stopped needing it to be. In the end, truth doesn't always come with noise. Sometimes it shows up quietly in letters, in dinner tables, in moments where nobody says sorry but everyone finally understands. I didn't expect the letter to come at all, much less on a Monday morning. It arrived in a plain white envelope marked Department of Justice, Wilmington Field Office. At first, I thought it was a routine security clearance renewal. Then I saw the name on the addressee line, Melissa Carter. They'd sent it to my apartment by mistake. I stood in the kitchen for a full minute, envelope in hand, debating what to do. Technically, it was illegal to open mail that wasn't mine. But curiosity and national security are two sides of the same coin, and I was still working for one of them. Inside was a single-page summary, stamped, "For recipient only." My sister had been officially cleared of wrongdoing in the ShawTech investigation. The letter praised her full cooperation and acknowledged that her internal compliance changes had assisted the Bureau in closing 2 adjacent cases. In short, they'd turned her from liability into collaborator. I folded the paper back into its envelope and set it on the counter. I should have been relieved. Instead, I felt that quiet, uneasy weight that comes when justice and irony share the same room. That evening, I drove to her townhouse in Charlotte. It was smaller than her old place, simpler, humbler, but clean. The kind of house someone buys when they're trying to rebuild, not impress. She opened the door wearing jeans and a gray hoodie, her hair pulled into a messy knot. She looked surprised but not unhappy to see me. "Wow," she said. "The famous Agent Carter shows up unannounced. Should I hide my laptop?" "Only if you've gone back to espionage," I said, handing her the envelope. "This came to me by mistake." She frowned, opening it carefully. Her eyes moved over the text, then softened. "So, it's over." "Officially," I said. She let out a long exhale, half laugh, half disbelief. I didn't think I'd ever see my name and cleared in the same sentence. "Oh." We sat at her kitchen table, the same way we used to when we were kids. Except now there was no cereal box between us, just years of unspoken things. "I've been meaning to call," she said quietly. "I just didn't know what to say." "You could have started with thank you." She raised an eyebrow. "For what? Destroying my reputation?" "For saving your record," I said. "That letter means you can work again. It means Dad won't have to read about you in another headline." "How?" She hesitated, then smiled faintly. "You really think Dad still reads the news? He calls Facebook the enemy." "He's not wrong," I said. The air lightened for a second before she leaned forward. You know, I found out something after the gala. Ethan wasn't working alone. He had help from inside Shawtek's Berlin branch. I know, I said. That's why the operation didn't end with him. Of course you know, she smirked. You always do. We sat there, the kitchen clock ticking between us. After a while she said, You ever get tired of it? The secrecy, the lying? Every day. So why keep doing it? Because if I don't, someone else will do it worse. That earned me a nod. A real one, not the sarcastic kind she used to give. She picked up the letter again, folded it neatly, and said, You know what's weird? When the FBI called me in for debriefs, they said something about a confidential informant who helped them connect Ethan's data to Shawtek's German servers. I asked who it was. They said the name was redacted. Sounds classified. Sounds like you. I didn't confirm it, but the way her eyes narrowed told me she didn't need me to. There was a moment then quiet, heavy, but not uncomfortable. It was the kind of silence that sits between people who've finally stopped keeping score. She broke it first. Dad said you're moving again. California? San Diego. Training Division. Training Spies? Something like that. She grinned. So, you're turning people into you. God help us. I laughed, surprising myself. You could apply. We're equal opportunity now. Yeah, I think the Navy's had enough of the Carter sisters. Before I left, she followed me to the door. Hey, she said. I mean it, thank you, for whatever parts I'll never fully understand. That's most of them, I said. She smiled. Then thank you for the invisible parts too. The drive home was quiet. Highway lights blurred across my windshield, and for once, I didn't feel like I was racing anything. No operation, no secret deadline, no guilt. Back at my apartment, I found another envelope in my mailbox, this one addressed to me, with the Navy intelligence seal. Inside was a commendation note, short and impersonal. Agent Carter is hereby recognized for exemplary conduct under Operation Deep Current, clearance level extended. Recommend reassignment to Advanced Training and Oversight Division, San Diego. 2 letters. 2 outcomes. My sister got redemption. I got relocation. That's how it always works, the world resets. But never back to where it was. I set both envelopes side by side on my kitchen table. One stamped justice, the other duty. Then I poured myself a drink and raised the glass toward them both. To family, I said softly, and to the kind of truth that doesn't need an audience. However, the room stayed silent, but for the first time in a long time, it felt like peace instead of emptiness. And maybe that's the closest people like me ever get to forgiveness. It's funny how revenge rarely looks the way people imagine it. There's no dramatic confrontation, no screaming in the rain, no big cinematic ending. Sometimes revenge is just silence, the kind that settles after the truth has already done the talking. 3 weeks after Melissa's letter from the FBI, I was finishing up my transfer paperwork for San Diego. Most of my stuff was already boxed up. I'd learned a long time ago not to get attached to walls, cities, or even furniture. You can't build a home when your job depends on disappearing. Still, I found myself thinking about Wilmington more than I expected. The family dinners that ended in quiet arguments, the company Melissa built, even the damn office coffee machine that always broke down on my shifts. All of it was noise I used to resent. Now it was background hum. I wasn't sure I wanted to lose. That morning, Dad called. You heading out yet? Tomorrow, I said. You want me to swing by? Come by tonight. Your sister's here. Isayad. Dodd. Don't argue. Just come. Our bat. When I got there, Melissa was sitting on the porch, bundled in one of Dad's old military jackets. She didn't look up right away. The sound of crickets filled the silence between us. Nice jacket, I said. She smirked. It's the only thing here that still fits me. You leaving for California? Tomorrow morning. She nodded. Figured. We sat quietly for a minute, the night air heavy with everything we weren't saying. Finally, she turned toward me. You know, I spent years thinking you were jealous of me. I was, I said. At least for a while, you had everything figured out, or that's what I thought. She laughed softly. Yeah, turns out I was just good at faking it. Dad stepped out with 2 beers, handed them to us, and went back inside without a word. It was his way of saying, work it out. Melissa took a sip and stared off into the dark yard. You know what people say about me now? That I built something and lost it all because of pride. They're not wrong, but no one knows who stopped it from getting worse. No one knows what you did. That's kind of the point, I said. Doesn't it bother you? Doing all that and never getting credit? I shrugged. Credit's for people who need validation. I just need results. She studied me for a second, then said, You're not as cold as you pretend to be. We talked for another hour. About Dad. About work. About life after scandal. She told me she'd been consulting for the Department of Energy, running cyber risk evaluations for infrastructure projects. Clean work, good money, no headlines. I guess I'm learning from my mistakes, she said. I guess I'm learning from yours too, I replied. When I left, she handed me a small box. Don't open it until you're on the plane, she said. The next morning, I did. Inside was a framed photo from when we were kids, me in my ROTC uniform, her holding my cap and pretending to salute. Taped to the back was a sticky note that said, For once, I'm proud of the one who stood in the background. I didn't cry, but I did close my eyes for a long time. 2 days later, I was in San Diego. The base was quieter than I expected, mostly training officers, data analysts, and new recruits who thought classified was a magic word. My official title was Senior Field Advisor. My unofficial one, Ghost in Residence. My first day, my commanding officer, Colonel Rains, greeted me with a nod. You're Carter? Yes, sir. Good. We need someone who can teach rookies what real discretion means. Half of them think TikTok's a threat assessment tool. I almost smiled. I'll handle it. Ode. Over the next few weeks, I settled in briefings, protocols, long days in windowless rooms, explaining to 20-somethings how to keep their mouths shut. Most of them looked at me like I was part machine, part myth. The woman who'd taken down a foreign data ring while her family imploded. One night after training, I got an email from Melissa. Just a short message. Dad says you're lecturing the next generation of secret keepers. Make sure they learn humility. You're living proof that it works. No signature. No emoji. Just that. That night, I walked out to the cliffs overlooking the Pacific. The ocean was black and endless, the kind of quiet that swallowed every thought before it could echo. For once, I let myself feel everything, the guilt, the pride, the exhaustion. It hit me then that my revenge hadn't been about exposing Melissa or proving anything. It had been about balance, about restoring the truth that got buried under her arrogance and my silence. And now that balance had found us both. She had her second chance. I had my peace. A message buzzed on my phone, an encrypted channel from Naval Command. Assignment request. Pending. Authorization needed. I didn't open it. Not yet. The world could wait a few more hours. I sat on a bench by the edge of the base, the wind off the ocean cutting through my jacket, and thought about how far we'd come. The sisters who grew up fighting over bathroom mirrors, now tied together by secrets, scars, and something resembling respect. Some people think revenge ends with victory, but the truth is, it ends with understanding. And in that quiet moment, I finally understood mine. The email came in at 5:47 a.m. before sunrise. Subject line, command briefing, attendance required. That phrase usually meant one of two things. You were being reassigned or you'd screwed up. I threw on my uniform and drove to the San Diego base, the fog still rolling in from the Pacific. The conference room lights were too bright for the hour, and the smell of burnt coffee hung in the air. Colonel Rains stood at the head of the table, posture as sharp as his haircut. Agent Carter, he said as I entered. Good timing. Ah. 3 other officers were already seated, people whose names you only heard when something serious was happening. Rains gestured for me to sit. He didn't waste time. You've been under review since Operation Deep Current, he said. The Bureau sent over its final assessments. I've read every line. I nodded, keeping my face neutral. Understood, sir. He looked at me for a moment longer, then cracked the faintest grin. You did good work. Damn good. You exposed a leak that cost us millions in compromised data, shut down a foreign relay system, and kept it clean. You're being promoted to senior strategic officer. It took me a second to process that. Sir, I thought the slot was frozen until next quarter. Command unfroze it for you, he said. You've earned it. I didn't say thank you right away. Not because I wasn't grateful, but because part of me wondered if I even wanted it. More responsibility, more secrets, more nights staring at empty walls wondering who you've become. Still, I saluted and said, Thank you, sir. He slid a folder across the table. You'll be heading a new interagency unit civilian, military crossover operations, real-world partnerships, quiet work but impactful. And Carter? Yes, sir? He leaned forward slightly. Try not to burn every bridge you cross. Some of us still need to walk back across them. That made me smile. I'll keep that in mind. After the meeting, I walked out into the morning light, the ocean air cutting through the base fence. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was running from something. On my way home, I called Dad. He answered on the second ring. You sound awake for once, he said. I got promoted. He laughed. About time the Navy realized what I've known since you were 12. Which is that you don't quit easy, even when you should. And he paused before adding, You told your sister yet? Not yet. Thought I'd give it a few hours. Don't wait too long, she hates surprises now. I did call later that afternoon. She answered with her usual dry tone. Let me guess. You caught another spy? Better, I said. They made me boss of the people who catch spies. There was a beat of silence, then a laugh I hadn't heard from her in years, real and unguarded. Look at you, my little security guard turned commander. End quote. Don't start, I said. Oh, I'm starting. Dad's probably printing banners already. It felt good, hearing her laugh like that. Not the polished, performative one she used in boardrooms, but the one from our childhood. You know, she said, I've been consulting on a few government contracts again. Clean ones. Maybe we'll cross paths. I'll pretend that doesn't sound like a threat. It's not, she said. I think we're finally on the same side. For once, I believed her. That evening, after the call, I stood by my apartment window watching the sunset stretch across the water. The sky was burning orange and fading into violet, and for a moment, everything felt still. I thought about how far things had come, the humiliation, the investigation, the fallout, and how none of it had destroyed us. It had stripped us down, sure, but maybe that's what truth does. It burns off everything that isn't real. Later, I walked along the beach near the base, the sand cold under my boots. A couple of young recruits were jogging past, laughing too loudly, still drunk on adrenaline and optimism. I envied them a little, their certainty that every mission ends with applause. They hadn't learned yet that most victories happen in silence. My phone buzzed. A message from Melissa. Saw your name on the internal bulletin. Senior strategic officer, huh? I guess this means I can finally stop mocking your little security job. Proud of you, Emily. Below that, a photo. Her new office smaller than her old one, but bright, simple, and hers. She looked happy. Maybe for the first time in years. We both were. I typed back. Proud of you too. We did it our way, didn't we? She replied a minute later. Yeah. Quietly. I smiled at that. Quiet had always been our language. Sometimes cruel, sometimes kind, but always honest. The wind picked up, carrying the scent of salt and jet fuel. I stood there a while longer, watching the faint lights of Navy ships flicker in the distance, and thought about how strange life was. You can spend years chasing validation, revenge, or closure, and then one morning, you just wake up and realize you've already won. Not because the world gave you credit, but because you made peace with your own story. And that's when it hit me. The real promotion wasn't on paper. It was in learning how to carry silence without letting it bury you. So, I turned away from the ocean, hands in my pockets, and started walking back to the base, ready for whatever came next, even if no one else ever knew the full story. The first thing you notice about San Diego mornings is the low hum of the ocean, mixing with the far-off rhythm of helicopters from the base. It's not silence, but it's close enough to make you believe in peace, at least for a few minutes. I'd been in my new role for almost 6 months when the realization hit me one morning. I hadn't thought about the operation, the scandal, or even the fallout in weeks. My life had slipped into something that resembled normal, a rare word in my world. Most days started the same. I arrived early, coffee in hand, before the others. The recruits would file in later, young faces, eager questions, still believing the world was black and white. I taught them how to listen, not just hear, how to read people without interrogating them, how to protect truth without destroying themselves in the process. During one session, a trainee asked, "Ma'am, how do you know when you've won?" The room went quiet. I smiled faintly. When you don't need to prove that you did. They didn't get it, not yet. But someday they would. Later that afternoon, I had a video call scheduled with Washington. Bureaucracy never sleeps. When the meeting ended, I saw an email waiting from Melissa. Subject line, "A small update." I opened it. "Hey Emily, thought you should know I got a permanent contract with the Department of Energy's Cybersecurity Division. I'm not a CEO anymore, and honestly, I'm fine with that. Maybe Dad was right, we spend half our lives chasing the wrong trophies. Anyway, I hope California's treating you well. Don't forget to visit, M." I stared at the screen for a while before replying. "Proud of you. You built something again. This time, maybe it's real." She replied instantly. "Funny. I was going to say the same thing about you." It was short, ordinary, almost boring. But that was what made it perfect. We weren't performing anymore. Just two sisters who'd finally stopped keeping score. That night, Dad called. His voice sounded rough, but warm. "Your sister told me about her new job. I haven't heard her sound that steady in years." "She earned it," I said. "So did you," he replied. "You ever gonna come home and let me cook for you again?" "Only if you promise not to make chili out of military rations." He laughed, that gravelly laugh I'd missed. Fair trade. When the call ended, I sat in the dim glow of my apartment, the ocean breeze moving through the open window. For the first time, I realized that all those years of resentment, secrecy, and sacrifice had led me somewhere that wasn't destruction. It was balance. I'd thought revenge was about payback. I'd thought justice needed to be loud to count. But the truth is, the quiet victories are the ones that last. The ones where no one claps, no one posts headlines, and no one knows your name, but something good stays standing because you did your job. A few days later, a new recruit kid, couldn't have been more than 22, approached me after a session. "Ma'am," he said, "I read about Operation Deep Current online. They said the agent behind it was never identified. Was that you?" I looked at him and smiled. "You really think I'd tell you if it was?" He grinned nervously. "Probably not." "Then you're learning," I said. That evening, I walked out to the cliffs again. Same wind, same endless stretch of ocean, same feeling that somewhere out there, everything I'd done was rippling in ways I'd never see. I thought about Melissa, the sister who used to roll her eyes at my uniform, who once said I'd never do anything meaningful. Now she was out there protecting systems that kept the country running. Different branches, same mission. Maybe that was our quiet truce. I thought about Dad, still fixing broken things with his bare hands, still the compass that somehow pointed both of us home even when we didn't want to admit it. And then I thought about myself, Agent Emily Carter, formerly the little sister with the security job, now the woman people trusted to train the next generation of those who protect from the shadows. It wasn't pride I felt. It wasn't even relief. It was something steadier, simpler, like peace, but earned. The sun dipped behind the horizon, painting the water gold for a moment before the blue took it back. I closed my eyes, letting the sound of the waves drown out the noise in my head. This wasn't the kind of ending anyone would write headlines about. There was no grand applause, no redemption speech, no sudden tearful reunion. Just a life rebuilt, piece by piece, without the need to prove anything anymore. And maybe that's the real reward, the kind no medal or title can replace. As I turned to head back toward the base, my phone buzzed again. A message from Melissa. "Dinner next month. Dad's birthday. No excuses." I typed back, "Wouldn't miss it." Then I slipped the phone into my pocket, smiled to myself, and kept walking toward the lights of the base, toward the work that still mattered, and toward a life that finally made sense without the noise. Because in the end, the real strength isn't in fighting the world. It's in learning how to stand quietly in it steady, unshaken, and free. If stories like this speak to you, don't just watch and leave. Subscribe now, drop a comment below, and join this community of people who know what it means to rise again. Because here, we don't tell stories about victims. We tell stories about survivors who learned how to win quietly,